When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Major ruling from Quebec Superior Court, ruling that police cannot pull over a driver without cause. This follows a racial profiling case launched by Joseph Christopher Luamba, a black Montrealer who says he was stopped 10 times in 18 months after getting his driver's license. The judge in the case, the ruling, it packed a punch. It stated this: racial profiling does exist. It is not a laboratory-constructed abstraction. It is not a view of the mind. It is a reality that weighs heavily on black communities. It manifests itself in particular among black drivers of motor vehicles. So the practice now is out. I mean, in 6 months, I imagine there would be an appeal that could delay that further. But I wanted to speak to Ari Goldkind, criminal defense lawyer, legal analyst, about this ruling. Ari, welcome to the show.
Mr. Elias, great to be on with you.
The reason I wanted to talk to you and no one else is because I would say in this news cycle on this story, all I have heard over and over and over is the exact same view over and over and over on that this ruling was the right decision and that the practices of the police are 100% entirely wrong. And I want to know from you, and I love, because I simply don't know what you're going to say here. And I love that I don't have to, like with other guests where I'm like, well, I know what they're going to say. Ari, what's your take on this ruling?
So I appreciate that introduction, and your listeners should know we don't pre-tape, we don't discuss anything before we go live. I did not know that's your view of me, and I appreciate that and take it as a compliment. So let's break this down. A 164-page decision came out. It was just posted prior to us going on air. I'm only answering the questions based on the reporting so far about this. I have not read the 164 pages yet. That's an important preamble. Now that we get the legal Seinfeldian, not that there's anything wrong with that, out of the way, let's talk about how I think so many of the takes of this are wrong. I think this case will likely end up at the Supreme Court, and I think the Supreme Court will flatly reject it. I think the Court of Appeal of your province, Quebec, known to be a bit more of a liberal court of appeal, may say it's okay, but the Supreme Court won't. Let me explain why, and I'm going to try and use very simple notions. Here's the important takeaway. The headline and reporting about this case, Elias, is that something new was done in a Quebec court the other day. That a Quebec court said racial profiling is against the charger and it's a big no-no in Canada. Well, I hate to break this to people who aren't inside baseball, the way, defense lawyers, crown attorneys, and judges are. Racial profiling has always been against the charter, Elias, okay? That's the important thing to start with. What this case seems to be saying is that you can't do random stops anymore, okay? And we're going to get to that depending on time. You can't just willy-nilly have a cop look at a car and pull it over. Well, that's not the law. That's not the law from the Supreme Court of Canada going back about 32 years to a case called Ladouceur. And long story short, Elias, driving is a privilege. People should not conflate, which in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver people do, the idea of what's called carding or street checks in your province, where somebody's walking down the street and they get stopped or, grabbed or talked to because they're black or of another racial minority. Driving is a privilege, and the case law is extraordinarily clear, Elias. Nobody should misunderstand this, that random stops are absolutely okay when they are for specific legislated purposes. Now, this story is juicy because of the headline, and let me get to it, okay? Mm-hmm. Any stop that's predicated on racial profiling, let's just call it out. I see a driver, I'm a cop, he's black, I pull him over. He's not speeding, I have no information his license isn't paid for or that it's suspended or that the car's stolen. Courts are likely going to toss that arrest out and the evidence of anything found as a result of that stop. That's important for your listeners to know. That, by the way, Elias, in your province and mine and every province in Canada, is viewed by the courts as an extremely serious breach, if you're with me.
Yeah.
If you are a cop and you're twiddling your thumbs and you're not solving crime, I mean, you can fill out the cliches, and you pull somebody over for driving while black, courts are going to absolutely, I'm trying to use a non-swear word in the 11 o'clock hour, courts are not going to take kindly to that. Maybe I'll put it that way, okay? So the Quebec court is not breaking new ground by saying it exists, and it's against it. In fact, for any basketball fan of the Elias Macco show, all your audience has to do is Google a case called D. Brown. He was a very successful Raptor a long time ago in Toronto who got pulled over for driving while black, and that's the classic racial profiling case. So before we get to where this case goes, and stop me whenever you want, I know we have commercials we're running up against, we know that racial profiling exists. It is accepted in Canada that it does, and it is taken seriously and a violation. What this Superior Court did, and again, haven't read the 164 pages going off the reporting, as are you, says that random stops, period, are against the Charter. That's not true. That's not the case. The police can stop a driver, Elias, whether it's you, a white friend, an Asian friend, a Jewish friend, a Muslim friend, for the purpose of checking whether they're drunk, their license. That's constitutionally okay. If the stop is unrelated to driving, Elias, okay, it's about something else. They don't like the cut of your jib for a stereotypical reason. That's a breach of certain charter rights. The Highway Traffic Act legislation specifically provides the opportunity to pull somebody over for the purposes of checking Highway Traffic Act provisions. And to the random stop, which you read in the intro to our story, there's really no such thing as a random stop. That's a misunderstood term, Elias.
Okay, so
cops.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, but so Ari, just because we got maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes to wrap up here, right?
Sure.
So on the case here, in this case that went to court, a black Montrealer says stopped, pulled over 10 times in 18 months, right? Yep. So then I said, if you say there's no such thing as a random stop, and then I look at that story, I'm like, well, geez, can that actually be random? And then at the same time, Ari, what I'm trying to balance in my head is the need for police to do their jobs at times, whether it has to do with gun crime or drunk driving, right?
So that's a great question.
Yeah.
So let's go to, I'm going to skip ahead because we're low on time. A lot of people will say, and I use this term sometimes in other matters, because I do think police have been handcuffed. I think police have been thrown under the bus. I think police have been smeared and feathered and tarred with all sorts of totally inappropriate names and smears. But remember, when a cop is on the road and sees you driving by, whether you're black or white, and decides to pull you over, okay, they've already run a check on your license plate, okay? They know whether you're driving normally, whether you're suspended, whether the car is reported stolen. They know that before they pull you over and walk up to you and say driver's license and registration. Anything that goes beyond that, when you're pulling somebody over for no legitimate, discernible reason, other than, again, racial profiling or the permissible reasons, cops need to understand that. And to your point about the 10 times in 18 months, that's a problem. And this court, Elias, if I could sum it up in 15 seconds, isn't breaking new ground by saying so.
Ari, we'll leave it there. We could talk a lot longer on this issue, but I
Sure.
do like that we have highlighted this is way more complex and a way trickier ruling than it's been
Correct.
sort of talked about in the last 24 hours.
And that's all I wanted to say in our 5 seconds left. The headline, the reporting, there's a lot more nuance here, and I think people should understand that.
Ari, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Ari Goldkind, criminal defense lawyer and legal analyst.